Okay, well, I'm going to begin because there is a lot to talk about when it comes to citations. So welcome. My name is Heather Morgan, and I am one of the librarians here. I also have with me
Ben Ugaldia. I too am a librarian here at Spokane Falls.
So Ben's going to be my co-pilot during the workshop today. He's going to be monitoring the chat windows and, piping in all that kind of stuff throughout the presentation. So just so you know, before we jump into this, this is being recorded, but before the librarians post it publicly, we will be removing names and things like that. So your names will not appear in the recording, but I do want you to be aware that it is being recorded. So today's presentation is about citation generators, and this is actually the first of two presentations related to citations that we're doing this spring. And for those of you who are looking for information about citations in general, the link that we have up here on the screen, and I'm assuming everyone can see my screen, right? I'm sharing my screen. Yes. Awesome. This is a link that will take you to the library's citation guide that we have. And I will just show you that. Whoops. There we go. This is what that citation guide looks like. So after this presentation, if you ever have questions about citations, you can come to our citation guide and you will see we have help on MLA, APA, some Chicago, some IEEE, verbal citations, and speeches. So additional help is here for you.
And I just posted that URL in the chat, folks. So if you need to, I would just click on it now and then star that site so that you can get back to it very easily.
Perfect. Thank you. So just some reminders, because we are on Zoom, please be respectful and remember that this is a safe space for learning. We encourage you to be present and participate actively. This is an interactive workshop because honestly, with citations, if we don't get some hands-on practice, I feel that we're not really grasping all of the different intricacies with it. As I mentioned before, if you have questions, and I'm sure you will, please drop them in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask your questions. We will be using a Padlet and Google Forms for you to respond or interact with us. Please note that while I really want you to participate, please only do that if you are in a safe space to do that. I sometimes have people who are calling in while they're driving. If you're driving, please don't try and answer a Google form or participate on the Padlet. So at the end, if you are here and you want to make sure that you are getting extra credit from an instructor or this is a requirement for a class, we do have a form that you will need to fill out. If you do not fill out that form, we cannot let your instructors know that you were here. So please be aware of that. So for today's workshop, what we're planning on addressing is a quick introduction to citations, the 5 basic steps to creating citations, the citation generator recommendations that I personally have. These are the ones that I like to use, how to check a citation, and then where else can you go? So beyond citation generators, where can you get some more information about citation generators? And of course, at the end, a practice activity that will give you your extra credit. So the first question is, why do we even use citations? And I think a lot of times these are sort of the important reasons why we do it. It helps you avoid plagiarism. And if you've grown up in the American education system, you've probably heard about plagiarism before. This means that you are trying, plagiarism is when you try and pass off somebody else's work as your own. So that means you might literally be copying and pasting, you might be just not giving credit to the people who actually created it. And so citations help you provide that credit and avoid plagiarism. Also, it's ethical. You want credit for the work that you do. If you are someone who is, let's say you're artistic, you're a photographer, and you've taken a photograph and you put that out online and people start copying and putting on their social media, but they don't give you credit, you're not going to like that. That's not ethical. You should give the creator credit. And so citations are how you are ethical with your use of information, and you share information about where they can find the original creator. Now, in terms of, I kind of like this as like the feel-good reasons for why we use citations. This is where you get to brag about the work that you do. So a lot of times we use citations in our academic papers. You have to, okay? You need to tell your instructor, hey, look at all of this research I did. And the way that they're going to know about your research is to look at your bibliography, to look at your citations. It also provides more evidence for your work. It gives your work more authority because you can say, this is my idea, this is my conclusion, and I'm basing this off of these other works that I have looked at, this documentary I watched. And once again, your bibliography is how your instructors or how you get to show all the research that you have done, right? Any questions about that? All right. So now that we know why we use citations, we also need to know what are citations. And citations are simply directions. They are telling your audience where they can find the evidence that you are using in your presentation or in your paper or in your speech. And they typically, if it's a written format, typically have two pieces. You have your in-text citation, and that's what this example on the screen is that says McFarland, 2004, page 90. That's what you would write in the paper itself. So if you've directly quoted somebody, you immediately want to tell your readers a little bit about where they can find that quotation, or if you've summarized an idea, where can you find more information about that summary that you've provided. And so it's a shortened form. We call it an in-text citation. And that points your reader to the last page of your project, your presentation, your paper, where you're going to have a bibliography, or in APA, we call it a works cited list, a references list. In MLA, we call it a works cited list. And that last page gives the full citation. That provides a lot of information so that your reader can track down that source. Okay, so in this instance, McFarland is what I have in my paper. I look at the last page and I say, oh, that's where I find the whole source. In today's workshop, we're going to be focusing on using the citation generators to create this full citation that appears at the end of your project. Oops. That always happens to me. So just a reminder, if you're not exactly sure what I mean by that bibliography, that is that last page of your project or presentation. And if you're doing MLA, that's what we call a works cited page. And here's an example of what a works cited page would look like. Okay. If you're using APA, this is an example. Rather than calling it a works cited page, we call it references. And this is what a references page for APA style would look like. Please note this should all be double spaced. I single spaced it just so that you could kind of see more citations in one spot. But you'll notice that they do follow sort of a format in terms of the layout of how they appear on the page. But I like to start our presentation by showing you ultimately this is what you are hoping to create when you're using your citation generators. So the 5 steps to citation creation. The first step, and I feel that these 5 steps tend to work with like any citation format that you're using. The first step is you must choose a style format. For this presentation, I'm going to be talking I'm only going to really be talking about MLA and APA because those are the 2 most common style formats that a lot of students use at the community college, but there are additional citation formats. You have AMA, which is like a lot, if you're in like nursing or the health field, they may use that. You also have IEEE or CSE if you're working in like computer science. If you're in the history field, you might be using Chicago style. Each discipline usually has a preference for their style format. So if you're not sure what your instructor or what your discipline likes to use as a style format, please ask your instructor, okay? They will tell you. But like I said, typically it's MLA and APA are the 2 most common ones that we see here at the community college. Once you've chosen your style format, you're going to use that for all of your citations for one presentation. Don't jump between things. If you're writing a speech and you're doing APA, stick with APA for all of them, okay? Step 2, you're going to identify your source type. That means you need to know what it is that you are citing. And that might be a newspaper, that might be a magazine, that might be a journal, it could be a lecture, a video. There's so many different source types out there. But you must know what type of source you are citing. And then that brings us to step 3. What is your access point? Your access point means how are you personally interacting with that source? How did you get that source? Is it something which I refer to here as print or real life, which means, did I hold it in my hand? Did I check a book out off the shelf? Did I, buy the magazine when I was in Barnes and Noble or something? Is it print or real life? Your other option tends to be online. Did I access it through a database? Is it through a website? So something like YouTube, is a video that you found online. Now, your access point, a lot of times students may think that their source type is a website, when really that's your access point. That's one of those tricky areas here when we're looking at steps 2 and 3. You may think, hey, I read the spokesman review online, but, and you're thinking, okay, so I'm citing a website because I'm looking at it online. When in actuality, the spokesman review is a newspaper that you are reading online. So your source type is different. It's kind of the tricky part of it, okay? So step 4 is where you are going to, put together steps 2 and 3. And that's how you're going to find the formula. You're going to look and say, my source type was a class lecture, and my access point was in real life. So I'm going to now look for the formula for how do I cite a class lecture in real life. Maybe you read a journal article that you found through one of the library databases. Okay, it was in ProQuest. It's a journal article in a database. And so then you would look for that formula. Once you kind of have an idea of your formula, you're going to create the citation, and that means you're going to plug in the information into that formula. And so to help you, with finding the formulas, you're going to look for either a style guide, which exists in print. If you come into the library, we have MLA style guide, Chicago style guides, and it's an actual book that gives you the formulas. You can also use some of the citations that are in databases themselves, or you can use a citation generator. And that's what we're going to be focusing on right now, okay, in this presentation. Now, before we get to the actual citation generators, remember I said, step 1, we're going to choose a style format. Step 2, we have to identify the source. And that can be really tricky. I think that's where a lot of people get confused when they're doing citations. They're not exactly sure what they're citing. So this is where we're going to have that interactive portion. And we're going to use what we call a Padlet, and Ben's going to drop the Padlet URL into the chat box. So if you're in a safe space and can get to the Padlet, okay, I'm going to ask you to do that. If you're on a computer, it's probably going to open up in another tab or another browser. And what I've done is I have 4 source types here. And right here at the very top, the first one is the Queen of Basketball. I want you to look at this, and underneath it, I've given you 3 choices for what the source type might be. And what I want you to do is I want you to click on the heart underneath the source type you think that is. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about what I'm asking them to do? Okay, so I'm going to give you a few moments right now, and I want you to do each of the sources, okay? Do source 1, source 2, source 3, source 4. I will tell you source 4, you may have to log in to actually see the source, and so you're going to use your Bigfoot email and password with that, okay? So give you a few moments for that. If you have any questions while we're doing this activity, feel free, unmute yourself, drop them in the chat box. Awesome. Thanks. What's great about Padlet is that you can see as people are making their choices, like real time. I like that. Okay, it looks like a lot of people are looking at source 4 right now, so I'm just going to give us another few seconds to look at source 4, and then we'll go over the answers. Great. Okay. So source number 1, looking at our options down here, it appears everybody chose video clip. Now, I'm not going to lie. I saw that somebody had a website before. Okay. I don't know if that was peer pressure or whatever, but you can see here, this appears on YouTube, right? And it starts with by Ben Proudfoot and it goes into this video clip. And so this actually is a video clip. That's our source type. We just happen to access it. So our access point would be online. All right. The second source, this is about early Hawaiians from the National Park Service, right? I looked up at the top there. It's a nice article. Scrolling down gives me an update. Very nice. Okay, everybody seemed to agree. They believe it's a web page created content. And yes, in this instance, I agree. It does not appear in another magazine. It doesn't appear in a journal. This appears to be content that the National Park Service has made available on their website. So in this instance, I would choose website as my source type, okay? And my access point, of course, would be online. The third source, looking at this one, as I pull it up, this one, I'm going to give you 2 potential options as your source type, okay? Because some of you said it's a web page or a database created content, and then some people said, well, it's a podcast. I was actually looking at it as a podcast because I would hit play here, and this is a podcast. It says the database and Nielsen podcast. But I could see that maybe some students were thinking, well, maybe I'm actually looking at the summary here. This I would count as web page or website created content. But if I was listening to this, I would cite it as a podcast. Does that make sense? And then source type 4, okay, a number of you said, well, this is a web page or database created content. Some of you said it's a magazine. In this instance, this is actually a magazine that appears in a database. And so I'm going to pull it up. All of you should have had to log in. I logged in earlier. And the way that there's a couple of ways you can figure out what type of source type it is. One is right up here, it says magazine. So it actually tells you the source type. You can also click where it says abstract and details. And then when you're on abstract and details, you can look where it says source type and it will tell you. So databases are great because they will help you with the source type.
Heather, we had a question concerning source number 3, which is, could you cite source 3 both ways?
I think, and Ben, you can always ring in on this. I truly think that if I was listening to it, if I was listening to this podcast and that's where I was getting the content that I was going to be referring to in my project, I would cite it as a podcast because that's the source type.
Yeah, I would agree completely.
But if I was perhaps referring to something down here, let's say I was talking about, the 75%, I decided to cite this sentence, then I would cite that as a website. So really what it comes down to is where is the content that you are referring to? Does that help? Now, that's a great question. And one of the things to help you figure out with source types in the database, like I said, it'll tell you up at the top, or you might be able to go to abstract and details and I'll show you. If you're not sure, if you don't know what something is, like I mentioned before, the spokesman review, if I wasn't sure, I would literally Google the Spokesman Review, and I would try and learn more about it. And notice on the right, it says the Spokesman Review. It's a newspaper. That can help me with my source type. If I wasn't sure, I might go to the Spokesman Review. I would try and look for the About Us. And a lot of times that's at the bottom of the page often. You know, there'll be an About Us that will describe what they are, what type of publication they are. So those are some ways that you can learn more about source types. So great job, everybody, on your source types. I think you did like the best out of all the present times I've presented this. So now that we've looked at our source type and our source type with our access point, we now are going to say, how are we going to use those citation generators to actually create the citations? So there are two citation generators that I recommend. Ooh, before I say that though, I do like to do this. In the chat window, okay, you can either type it in the chat window or you can use like the thumbs up in Zoom. How many people have used citation generators before? All right. Okay, if you are a citation generator user, and I am, okay, feel free, drop the name of the one that you use into the chat window. I always like to know what's the popular ones out there right now. Okay, we've got EasyBib. That's like a perennial favorite, I think. Everybody loves EasyBib.
Yeah, I feel like that's the top result in Google.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Citation Machine. I stumbled upon that one again today. Purdue Owl. Yes, they have now embedded a generator in theirs, which is actually, I think, EasyBib. Awesome. Okay, so that's good. So a number of you are familiar with what citation generators are. Now, EasyBib, Citation Machine, I am not here to tell you not to use those. I'm just showing you my preferred ones that I use, okay? So one of the reasons that I like to show NoodleTools Express is that it's free. There's not a lot of advertising going on, which can occur with a lot of your free citation generators. And NoodleTools will even provide you the formula. So I'm going to show you NoodleTools really quick here. It's kind of laid out, see, it's nice and clean. You choose your citation style. So let's say, okay, I'm using MLA. And below it, they're going to ask you for your source type. What are you sourcing? And the great thing about NoodleTools is there are a slew of options. Look at all of these. Podcasts, blogs, photos, cartoons, lectures, so many options here that you can choose from. So that's where I think NoodleTools kind of rises to the top for me, the amount of options I have for what I want to cite. So let's say I did want to, I'm citing a magazine. I would say create citation. In here on the left-hand side, NoodleTools now says, what's your access point, right? That's step 3. And if I said, well, this was a magazine that I read in a database, I would choose database, and then I would fill in the information, okay? So once again, you plug in the information. If you want to know what the formula looks like, and sometimes I like to know that because I go, well, what are the real key components here? NoodleTools Express in the top right-hand corner has a little plus sign, and you can open that up and they'll say, this is how you cite a magazine in a database, and they give me the formula, right? This is very helpful for various reasons. Once you plugged in all your information, you can click save, and then it will generate that citation for you, which you would then copy and paste wherever you are taking your notes. It might be into a Word document, into a Google document, but NoodleTools, you then have to copy and paste the citation it creates for you into another document so that you can save it. All right. I think EasyBib's the same way, that you have to like copy and paste what they generate into another location once it's done. MyBib is also a great citation generator because it will actually store things for you, and you can add multiple sources to a project. And in the end, you can download an entire bibliography. So MyBib is open source software. You can create a an account with them for free. They're never going to charge you anything. This is totally free. But I always say it's up to you. You need to read the privacy rights and user agreement and decide if you're comfortable creating an account like you should with any type of online software. But if you don't want to do that, you can use it for free without creating an account. So let's say I wanted to cite this early Hawaiians article. Okay. We said before that this was website content. Okay. And I'm actually going to copy the URL just for a second. And I'm going to come in here and we'll say, oh, hey, yes, I'm going to cite this one and see this whole drop down menu here. All of these options. So if you need to use AMA, they can help you. If you need to use Chicago, they can help you. Here's APA. I'm going to use APA because I showed you MLA before. I'm going to hit save. And then I'll say add a citation. And they'll say, well, what are you citing? Once again, what is my source type? Please note there is a more button. A lot of times we overlook it and they do give you more options here. All right. Mine is a website. I can either enter it manually or I can drop in my URL. I'm going to drop in the URL. In here, please note it says credibility, proceed with caution. Evaluating information is a critical thinking skill that you need to do. Do not rely on MyBib to tell you something is credible. Okay, that's a different skill for you. I'm going to click on this and it says, well, wait a second. We didn't see a date published. Is there a date published on the website? So I'm going to go back to that article. I'm going to scroll down here. Usually it's at the top. It might be at the bottom. Oh, it does. It says last updated June 8th, 2021. So I'm going to say, yes, they did tell me. Okay, we say 2021, June 8th, next. And they'll say, okay, we plugged in the information for you. Here you go. Now at the bottom, notice they even give you a preview of what that citation ultimately is going to look at based on the information that's plugged in. Now, I can tell you just by looking at this citation that there are some problems with it. Does anybody see any problems with the citation just from what I have up here on this screen? If you do, feel free, you can unmute yourself or you can, throw something in the chat window. What if there's anything that doesn't look right to you? Thank you. Yes, the author is an address. It says mailing address. Okay. Obviously, that is not who the author is. So I know that I'm going to have to fix that. So I can actually delete all of that information out. Okay. I'm going to just delete that second line. In this instance, I would go back to the article. I would see if there is a named author, like a specific person listed here. If there isn't, sometimes I'll look at, who's publishing the website. Is it like a government agency who's probably like a corporate author or something like that? And I do see that this is being presented by the National Park Service. So personally, I am going to list the National Park Service as the author. And so over here, because I'm naming an organization, I'm going to click on the little person and notice it turns into like a building. That's so I can type in the name of an organization. So National Park Service, I would double check to check the title of the article, the date published. When did I look at it? Okay, I looked at it today. I can look at the website name again, double check what is the name of the website. I'd write it out as National Park Service, not nps.gov. Okay. Now in this instance, it's not asking me for a URL. Or did it ask me for you? Oh, there's the URL, sorry. And then I would hit save. And here is my citation. Okay. Notice underneath it, it even gives me a suggestion. Hey, this is what your in-text citation would look like. Once again, this is something that Ben will talk about in next week's presentation, in-text citations. But as you can see, they've already said, okay, since this is APA style, it's going to be references, and they've added it to my list. The other great thing about MyBib is that I can sit here and say, well, wait a second, I chose APA. It turns out I was supposed to use MLA. I goofed. I can then say, okay, choose MLA, hit save, and it literally changes what I just put into APA into the MLA format for you. Okay, so that's a really nice feature that we have here. The other nice thing is I can add a second citation right now, and it would add it to that list. And then you can download the works cited page. I'm going to log in right now so you can see what it looks like if you have an account. Are there any questions as I'm logging in about either the generator so far? So I've logged in. You can tell on the left-hand side, I have a lot of projects that I have going on, okay? And so let's say I was looking at, oh, here's my Education 204 class, and here's the citations I had for that. See how it's added each of my multiple citations. It's already put it in alphabetical order, all that kind of stuff. I can then say, well, let me download this. Now that I've finished, I can choose, do I want it as a Word document? Do I want it as a Google Drive document? I'm going to choose Word. Okay, it's downloading. Hold on one second. I just need to change my sharing screen for you. One second. Let me open this up. Can you get, well, I don't know. It's not pulling up my document for me right now. So I will just return back to screen number 1. But what will happen is it will then download it into a file like a Word document or a Google Drive document, and you can just add that to the end of your presentation. When writing a paper, how do you decide what needs to be cited and what doesn't? If you read an article that you don't directly reference, you need to cite it. So that's a great question, and that actually goes to your in-text citations to a degree, but anything that you refer to in your project, okay, doesn't matter if it's not a direct quotation. If you are summarizing something that, you know, a document that you learned in a documentary, or if it's an idea that you read about in a magazine article and you've paraphrased it, you need to include that in your works cited page or in your references page to let your readers know where you're getting those ideas.
Yeah, and I will cover this in more depth next week, Tuesday at 12:30.
Yeah.
There's kind of a fine line. Common knowledge is the only thing that you don't have to cite, but then you're left asking yourself, what exactly is common knowledge? So it can be tricky.
Yeah, but in general, if you've read something and you're planning on somehow referring to it in your project, then you need to include it on that last page. There is a slight difference technically. If your instructor asks for a bibliography, that's anything that you consulted, even information that you're not actually referring to in your paper. That's like a bibliography, whereas a works cited and a references are items that you've actually used in your project. I don't think I've had too many instructors around here ask for a bibliography that's different than a works cited page. So there you go. I may have just confused all of you. Sorry. So that's the 2 citation generators that I really like. Like I said, the big thing with MyBib is that I can create an account, I can save multiple sources to a project, and then I just hit download and it literally opens it up as a regular file that I can attach to my project. Now, once you have all of those citations, right, we've created them, we have to put them into the list. And remember, this is what the list looked like. I showed it to you before. MLA, we call it works cited. APA, we call it references, all right? The big thing to note is that, notice, like I already said, works cited versus references. On both MLA and APA, everything is double spaced. You double space the whole page. Notice that the first line of your citation begins on the margin and any additional lines with that particular entry are indented, okay? And notice that all of your entries are listed alphabetically by first word, okay? This is common for APA or MLA. That is how you cite them, unless your instructors asked you to do something different, but this is what you should be doing for MLA and APA. Now for MLA, some things to note. When you list your author's name, it's a last name, comma, first name. If you have a second author, you're going to write and then you write it in normal order for the name. If you have 3 or more authors, there's a slightly different way to do it, and we're gonna have to actually look at the style guide or look online. But these are some common things to pay attention to. In MLA also, if you have an article title, you're gonna put quotation marks around it. All right. And then you italicize the name of the whole publication or the whole website that you're using. All right. There's other rules about formatting, but these are kind of the basic common ones that you're going to run into all the time. So that's why I'm highlighting these. Now for APA, it's a little bit different. When you look at their names, they use their last name and then they only use their initials. Okay. Don't write out the name. If they've written out the name, you just turn that into initials. So I would be Morgan, comma, H. For your titles, this is a big difference. Article titles follow what we call sentence capitalization. So if you're citing an APA and you have to write an article title, write it like you would a sentence that you're putting into a paragraph, okay? And what that means is that the first word is capitalized, so the T is capitalized, but the rest of this is lowercase, okay? If in the sentence there is supposed to be, there's like a proper noun that you would normally capitalize in a regular sentence, you would capitalize that in your article title as well, okay? And once again, you do italicize your whole publication or your website title, right? Now that we've talked about the citation generators and how you then compile them as a references page or a works cited page, please remember that generators make mistakes. So you have to double check them. And a lot of times we tell you this, but we don't necessarily tell you how to do it. So I'm going to give you I'm going to show you how I would check some citations. So when I check a citation, the first thing that I do is I have to find the formula and then I'm going to compare it to what the citation generator gave me, okay? And once I've done that, I'm going to check the formatting as well. So let's say I need to find the formulas, okay? I didn't really talk about where to find formulas earlier in the presentation because we're focusing on generators. But do remember, I said in NoodleTools Express, you can find the formula by opening up that little plus sign in the corner. So you could find the formula there, or these are some places online that you can find formulas. Williams College has a really nice guide. So here's an example. You come here for APA 7th on the left-hand side, they'll say, what are you citing? We'd say, oh, it's an article. Oh, was it a journal article? Well, then here's your format. Was it a magazine article? Well, here's your formula. And, they'll even give you some examples below. So that's how I would go about looking for my formula, okay? Also, you can go to the official APA website. You can go to the official MLA website. OWL Purdue has a ton of information on their website. It can kind of be overwhelming. Or last but not least, sometimes I'll Google it. Maybe I'm having a little difficulty finding what I need on the Williams College site. I may say, how do I cite a TikTok video? How do I cite a tweet? I can Google that and try and find it. All right. So an example that I have is, let's say I went into that database article. So hold on one second here. I'm going to show you. So before, right, we were in the database here. One of the cool things about databases is they have a citation button, so I can click Cite. And here's the MLA citation 8th. I could copy and paste that. Or I could go to APA and I can copy and paste that. All right. So let's say that's what I did. And here I have the citation from ProQuest, the APA citation from ProQuest, literally just copied and pasted it. Then I went to Williams College and I pulled the formula for a magazine article. In APA, they don't always care if it's from a database or online, but I found, how would I cite a magazine article from Williams College online? So remember steps 2 and 3 again. I also looked at the APA style guide just so I had some additional things to look at. All right. So I looked at it and I said, okay, let's see. I have the author. Yep, I have authors. I have 2 of them. That's good. It says I now need the year and month. Okay, I have a year. Ooh, I have a specific day. Is this a problem? I'm going to look down here, and I said, well, in the APA guide, they had a month and a date. So I'm fine. I'm going to keep the November 27th. I'm fine with that. Then it says, what's the title of the article? Okay, here's the title of my article. Notice there's no quotation marks. Okay, magazine title, it's italicized. Yep, okay. The volume is italicized. All right, I'm good. Oh, well, I don't have any issues. I might need to go back and look at that citation. I might need to go back and look at the document and see if there's an issue. Because, you know, what if they missed the issue number? Okay, so I would go back to the database and I would look to see if there was an issue number for this particular article. And then it had page numbers. And then does it have a DOI or a URL? Okay, I have a URL here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to look at. So far, I feel pretty good about my content. Now that I feel like all those formula pieces have been plugged in properly, let me look at the formatting. So I pulled what I talked about, the common formatting. All right, let's see. It uses initials. Yep, it does. Okay, capitalize only the first word and proper nouns. Okay, that's capitalized. Oh, wait, Day of the Dead. That's usually a proper noun situation. I think dead needs to be capitalized. Oh, well, I definitely know Mexican Halloween needs to be capitalized. That's a proper noun. So I'm going to have to fix that. This is italicized, so that looks good. All right, I'm going to now update my citation and notice I capitalized D for dead. I capitalized the M for Mexican, the H for Halloween. So that's how I go about checking my citation. I take the generated one, but I kind of look back at that formula and I make sure that everything makes sense. For instance, when we were doing my bib and we looked at it and we said, wait a second, an author's name can't be a mailing address. We were helping to check the citation, the generated citation that way also. Okay. There's lots of nuances to checking citations, but this is an example of how you do that. I did the same thing for MLA. I went back, I pulled the MLA citation for ProQuest. I went to the Williams College site. I looked at their format for how do you cite in MLA. Oops, I was out of order there. There you go. I looked at the MLA style guide, same thing, kind of looked at their examples. And once again, I then went back in, everything was looking pretty good. I'm checking my formatting. It does not appear that I have any changes that I need to make. So in this instance, the MLA citation seems to have done a better job coming out of the database than the APA did. So you can't always just assume everything's perfect. You do need to double check. Does that help? Does anybody have any questions about how to double check their citations? Oh, if a citation isn't completely correct, would that be considered plagiarism? I don't think it would be considered plagiarism. I think it would be just considered sloppy work. Ben?
Yeah, no, I think if you're making an honest effort to cite it, but you've just done it maybe in the wrong format or perhaps left out an element, you'll probably be graded down just as you would if you had made a spelling error or some grammar error. But it wouldn't be plagiarism, I don't believe. And I should say it depends really to what extent you follow the citation rules. If you just put in a title, maybe.
Yeah, I will, because remember, the important part is with a citation that your reader can get to that source again. And I know a lot of times people think, well, okay, well, then I'll just drop the URL and I'll be good, right? But that actually doesn't always help your readers because your reader, that URL might stop working. So now your reader has no idea what did that URL go to. Did it go to a magazine article? Did it go to a journal article? Creating citations follow specific formulas. And I don't have this, I don't have this, sometimes I have this in some of my presentations. The way you write a citation, your instructors are very familiar with the formula, so it makes sense to them. Like this is the order things are going to go in. It's kind of like writing an address. When you plug it into Google Maps, you always put the address in the same way, right? You put the house number, the street, the city, the state. It goes in a particular order because everybody knows how to interpret that when it appears in that order. And so that's what's occurring when you're writing your citation. So yes, if you leave out like, whoops, I missed the issue number, you know, you might get dinged for it for not having a complete citation. But if all you provide is a URL, I think you're going to lose even more points. You're going to have a lot more because you didn't really make a full effort there. But it all depends on your instructor. Some instructors are very particular and really want you to know the exact mechanics. Others are going to give you a little leeway, like, oops, you dropped the issue, that's okay. So it's up to your instructor. So just a reminder that, you know, we talked about generators today, but if you need help with citations in general, we do have the SFCC citation guide, and that, as I showed you earlier, has information about MLA, APA, Chicago, IEEE, verbal citations. It'll have in-text citations. Williams College, I just like the way that they provide the citation formula plus an example. Because sometimes when you go to like the APA style website, they often just give you an example. They don't give you the formula. So I like Williams for that. OWL Purdue, as I mentioned, is a gold standard. Lots of people, a lot of instructors will direct you to OWL Purdue, but sometimes it can be overwhelming because it tells you a lot about citations. I also added here on the slide IEEE and AMA because those have come up sometimes when we've been working with students, so I want you to know that those are available as well. You know, one thing I forgot to point out is with MyBib, just so we can see, because I do like this about MyBib. If you wanted to, okay, let's say whoops, here it is. Let's say I did have this one. I went into a database, they gave me a citation because we love databases because they will help you with citations. But all my other citations are already here in MyBib. Like, what do I do? Because if I drop a URL into MyBib from a database, it's behind a paywall. They can't pull all the information for me. But MyBib will say, okay, well, here you go. Let's add the citation, go to more, and then paste the citation. If you already have the citation from another location, let's say a database, you can copy and paste it right into MyBib and it'll do it for you. Actually, this one, sorry, this is actually APA that I just dropped in there. So there you go. But please note, it's a little more difficult. Can I edit this? Yes, I can then go in and I could fix it and say M, H, etc., and fix my citation. There we go. So that's what we have today about citation generators, how to check them, where to find formulas. And a reminder for those of you who are still here, if you ever have questions about citations, the 24/7 chat with a librarian, and we have the URL up there on the screen for you. And it's the little bubble. If you go to the library website, it's the little bubble in the bottom right-hand corner. They are very helpful with citations. You can go there and say, I'm trying to cite this website. Am I doing it right? What am I, can you help me with this a little bit? They can help you with citations as well as research questions.